Welcome to the Pantheon Plus Rewind. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 90 of the Rewind, your weekly podcast that's keeping you up to date on the development of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. If you're looking for a future MMORPG to bring back that sense of camaraderie and conquest, you're in the right place. Today, we're going deep on the February Producers Letter. We're shouting out some guilds, and then we're stepping into the frail age of Terminus with some lore. So lay down your arms, hang your shields, and stow your armor for about an hour, because the guest right has been invoked. Come feast at the table with me, Theric, and my noble co-host Desrin, as we bring you this week's Rewind. Oh, all right, Desrin. So how are you doing? I'll tell you first, my week has been extremely difficult. I don't want to flex on you with weather stories, but living in Winnipeg is rough. It is rough. If you have ever had to go to work, going to work, I mean, it's tough to begin with, but when you have to put on ski pants, ski goggles, a toque and like a jacket that's you could go into the Arctic with, your day is not off to a good start. And that's what my day was like today. So I'm sorry if your weather is bad there, but my weather is much worse here.
My weather is beautiful here in the sunny Pacific Northwest. Although
jealous.
I have to say, I do hear you on the dressing up because being someone that had to ride to work all the time, weather not denying me. So I have a full set of rain gear to bike with. And let me tell you, if it's cold and wet and like you got a bike to work, man, it can be pretty rough as well.
Yeah.
But probably not negative, whatever it was.
Negative a million.
Rough.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
In case our viewers don't know, like in the guild chat, we have this like tradition of posting our weather in the morning, and so we get to kind of see what everyone's dealing with, and Theric's on the bad side of the scale for sure.
I feel like I could win the day every time because it's just never nice here. There's always some craziness going on, but I'm ready to talk some Pantheon. I'm ready to stop thinking about crappy weather and hard roads and all that kind of stuff. I'm ready to talk some Pantheon for the week if you are. So Let's get to it. Yeah, I have to say, it's official because VR needs to spill the beans on another raid level creature because we keep assembling raiding parties on the Rewind, and poor Sleepless has been on lockdown ever since. So we got another raid force up this week. Thanks for everyone who generously donated last week. Let's go through our raiding squad. We've got Shuriken on the Dwarf Cleric, Ziplox on the Dark Mer Rogue, Jason on the Scar Beard Lord, Sparrow on the Elf Ranger, Bounty Code on the Human Wizard, Bitcrunch on the Ashen Elf Shaman, Screech on the Scar Bard, Zerg Jerk on the Dwarf Rogue, I'm pronouncing these horribly today, Daimlos on the Dark Mer Cleric, Crowsinger Halfling on the Halfling Druid, Brian Reck on the Gnome Summoner, and a new member of the adventuring team, Thaldrin on the Archai Warrior. So being a tank and being first time on the party, I think you know what that means, don't you?
Finally. Oh my gosh.
I think we need to send them in first. I think they get the Leroy Jenkins a privilege here of being our raid puller, if you will.
Yep. Go get him, Thaldrin.
Go get him, Thaldrin. Anyway, you guys all rock. We salute you for being the ones that we get to hang out with each and every Sunday. Again, if you like the Rewind, you want to support what we do, join the surly mob of adventurers we've got and toss a donation during Super Chat during the premiere, or hit up our Patreon page for more options there. But like I said, I'm ready to talk some Pantheon. We've got a good week lined up, so let's get on to the VR news and notes. This week in Visionary Realms News and Notes. Okay, so newsletter week, which is always a good time. But I'll be honest, those video stream updates are always fun, and we get to talk and chat, and we get to, goof around and have fun, and sometimes talk to the devs, all that stuff. But getting stuff like the newsletter out written down, on paper so we can process it, makes it a little more concrete for me. I feel like there's a little bit more can dive into it. And if it's on paper, it's also just more real in my mind.
Yeah.
So I like to go back and reference the newsletters a lot.
Yeah, it's easy to like archive and look stuff up later,
Right. Yeah, the video ones. Although I have to say, since they started putting chapters in their video developer streams on YouTube, the chapters make it tons easier to find information. Same with the roundtables. So if you haven't noticed that, there are chapters on those things. Anyway, getting back to the newsletter, we always get the updated roadmap to alpha, which we're going to break down with some commentary. But they called February, and this is the quote, one of our most substantive months to date. So in terms of development, so let's start with that, because the headline that I take away from this, and I think this is the one that has been picked up on a few other places as well, some of the MMO journalism sites, was that they now have a HDRP version of their current build in the hands of their QA testers, right? So that's pretty cool. Here's the quote that they gave. They said, at the beginning of the month, we achieved an internal milestone with the first playable HDRP build making its way into the hands of our Q&A team, who've been busy identifying issues that tend to crop up with such an enormous update. Initial feedback to the gameplay changes included in this build have been positive, and we're continuing to tweak and refine the experience in preparation for the next build. So that's exciting. That's a big milestone to achieve.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever you hear internal milestones being achieved, that bodes well. And if you want to get an idea of what the next step is for them, they just had their Q&A team do the developer roundtable back in October, and I believe that was with Kim Morrison, one of their QA lead. So there's you can hear about what that process looks like. But they've got this build now in the hands of those testers, and squashing bugs, looking for issues. They really gave the sense that this was a big this is a big update, a big change, and there's lots to be analyzed here. So Desiree, what was your reaction when you read that?
Well, first of all, it's a long time coming, right? So I think as time goes, my hype when it's finally happened is always like dulled a little bit, I'm gonna be honest. But this is a huge step. I mean, it's like they've been working on, this car for forever, and it's not detailed, it's not completely done, but they can finally drive it. And that's just a big deal. And there's still plenty more stuff to do, but it's kind of like we've finally crossed that threshold where we know the final version of the game is going to be HDRP, and the whole process of converting and, not throwing away, but moving from this old pipeline to HDRP and finally being able to hit the ground running with it now is like, it is amazing. I'm really excited to see how things start falling into place now that this is QA testable. And maybe hopefully like PA testable.
Yeah. And they did talk about getting it ready for the next PA testing. It's definitely been a while since we had a PA test that where they were seeking feedback and looking for information from testers. And there's going to be lots for this. This is going to be lots of testing that needs to go on. It's like you said. They finally have a car that they can drive and put through the paces, run some crash testing, all these analogies that are, trying to really get it sorted out and get it figured out. I'm hopefully we'll hear, like, I want to hear like everything. Like, I don't want to just hear the good things. I want to hear what problems they've had. Like, maybe this is just my opinion, or maybe this is my perspective, but I feel like, if we hear some things like, oh, okay, we had a major, obstacle to overcome with this, that would be good to hear, because there's going to be that. Like, this is a pretty major changeover. So I would expect that they're going to encounter some difficulties. It's not going to be all sunshine all the time, right? So I'm interested to, hopefully, maybe that can be something that they do in a patch notes down the road. Listen for that. The next time there's a developer stream next month, listen for what the patch notes are, because they might be reflective of this change, right?
True. I mean, I'm with you, but at the same time, they have, just want to be like clear on that. They have said when there were problems, they just, maybe haven't been ultra specific. and I don't know how helpful it would be if they were ultra specific, because if people can focus so much on like one line of good news, if they get specific about some particularly bad news, people are going to jump all over it. They're going to extrapolate and go down the whole rabbit hole. So I wouldn't want them to be like, oh, specifically, like we had issue with these scripts and how I don't really want to go down that. Even if it would be interesting for me.
I see what you're saying there. I mean, it's the good and the bad of more information, right? More information sometimes, can lead to, just unnecessary worry, unnecessary stress. But on the other hand, you want to hear the successes, but you also want to be expecting that there's going to be some challenges with this, as there always are in large scale projects, right? So don't be surprised if, again, there might be a delay. There might be some things that go on. You never know. But I sure hope that we can get in there and start testing again soon, because this is going to be like a whole new world when we can get in there. So I'm jealous. Yes, thank you. Thank you for adding in a musical element to that. I'm jealous of Kim and the QA team right now, because I think they're probably enjoying what they're seeing.
They're probably busy as
well, it's like they talked about in the roundtable, right? Like when I say enjoying, I think maybe that's not the case, because what testing involves is doing the same exact task thousands of times to see if anything changes. All these variable experiments that they do. Anyway, so that was the sort of the headline grabbing thing from the newsletter. A couple other things that caught my eye. One was this. Listen to this quote. Quote, "We expect to begin the integration of our sky and lighting solution shortly as well, which will allow us to realize our day-night cycle and support the implementation of additional planned features such as time of day driven spawns and dispositions." So pretty cool, right? That last line, time of day driven spawns and dispositions, that's something new. And it's something we've talked about actually on the podcast, I think at least a couple times, where we're like, ooh, the dangers of nighttime, right? Like what's going on at night? And we've always sort of thought about it like in terms of creatures and dangerous things, but specific dispositions that can be attached or, spawn with a creature at night. That's pretty cool, right? It's the first time we're hearing about this.
It's funny you say it's the first time, because for some reason in my head, I actually feel like either we've talked about this before or I've seen devs talk about it before in other like areas, and maybe this is the first like public time, but this actually didn't stand out to me, oddly enough.
Interesting. Wow. Well, that's interesting because it definitely stood out to me, and I don't know. I mean, my memory is not great. So
either way, it's awesome. I'm super excited to see it.
Yeah, like oh man, I could start pontificating about all the types of dispositions you might see at night. Like what would be something that you would mean, like a vampiric orc or something like that, right? Like super cool.
Oh, I want to see like sensory things, right? Like, I mean, nighttime, obviously some creatures may be more adept at doing things at night, and I dispositions are one thing, but I love the idea of different creatures, because different creatures are a complete mix up of like gameplay, and I love the idea of that kind of dynamism. If that's something that they're getting ready to implement, like, sooner rather than later, or at least being able to support sooner rather than later, it means it's an integral part of the world. And that is really exciting.
Right. So, I mean, so this is gone from the planning stage into now the integration stage, right? So they're saying we expect to begin integration of their skylighting solution, their day-night cycle, and then the things that go along with that. So I can't wait to see that. I want to see more about that. Another thing we got was a pretty cool graphic of some daggers, some computer modeled, 3D modeled daggers. And maybe, I don't know, I'm looking at this right now, actually, and I'll put it on the screen during the video so everybody else can see what we're talking about. Am I wrong, Desmond? Is this a 3D model or is this art? Because I assumed this was 3D modeling.
So to me, it looks like art.
Okay.
I was trying to look at it close enough, and if it's not art, it is stylized 3D. And I actually wasn't really thinking of going down this road, but just as like a something to throw out there, because we probably don't have time for it, but the style of Pantheon, is it changing? Like, there's a certain element of looking at these that I really like. I really like the aesthetic, but at the same time, there's something different about it, and I can't put my finger on it.
I don't see it. That's interesting. Because that again, so now that's something I'm not seeing at all. But
All right,
maybe
chat then. Like,
yeah,
chat comments.
let's take a vote. Let's take a vote. And what do people think? Is this a different style, or does this fit with what we know about Pantheon's art style? Because again, remember, new concept artist was recently hired, so we're sort of still waiting to see. But then that's a concept artist. This might be 3D modeled. It's hard to tell. The one thing I will note that we can both agree on is there's some throwing stars in there, right?
Yes. Monks are probably going to be really happy for multiple reasons in this newsletter, but this is the first one.
Do you remember back in the old streams, like way back, like I think 2018 streams, when Kilson was playing a rogue, and I think it was Ko they were playing with, and they used to have throwing stars in the game. Yeah. He was pulling with throwing stars. Yep. Do you remember that?
Yep, totally.
Yeah, he brought it up, I think. Yeah, Kilson should be happy. Now he can do his ninja stars again. So anyway, the point is this, the quote that they had surrounding this graphic you're seeing is, character art and animation has been focused on introducing a veritable armory of new weapon models. So, I get the feeling this is just a sample of what they're doing. We've seen some more recently in the dev stream. There was one, the hammers and that kind of thing. So good to see that kind of stuff happening. VR gave us an update actually on their staffing situation too, which isn't always the case. We don't always get any updates about new members of the team or ones that have moved on. But they did give us one here. They talked about it. They said, with progressing our alpha roadmap, being our main focus this year, we have a pretty good idea of the roles we want to fill and in which order. Thanks to our amazing community and generous pledges over the years, we've come such a long way in filling these roles, and we only have a few more key spots to fill when the time comes. So it sounds like, in line with what we've heard the last couple months, they are expanding the team. They've got some definite targets they want to hit. And I want to credit Basgrim here because he had a really good observation just that goes along with this really well. On the official website, if you go and check the official website, they've actually updated some of the roles of their current staff. Staff such as Adam Mostel, who we're going to talk about a little later too, got promoted to production manager and senior game designer, while Sacred and Nefel are now both full game designers, not just associates anymore. So awesome for them, right? That they get these, they're sort of getting greater responsibilities, I would imagine, with these titles and with these, I'm assuming, are promotions. And I'm not going to gush because nobody's perfect, but these are three core members of the team,
Yeah. I mean, Adam has quickly become, to me at least, because I'll gush, whatever. Adam has absolutely become like a staple of anything like VR communications related, and he's really, I'm not going to say like he's become the new Joppa or whatever, but in like a similar way of it kind of transitioning to Joppa for a lot of the design discussions. I feel a lot of that with Adam, and it just cracks me up because he's actually like a fairly new member of the team, right? And yeah, it's just really exciting.
I feel like when you hear him and Joppa, doing doing a dev stream or talking together, and they're on the same, answering questions, I feel like they're very similarly minded. I feel like there's the ideas that Adam has really resonate with Joppa because you can sort of see the gears turning a lot of times. Great to give him a greater role and increase the profile there. And same with Sacred and Nefel. I mean, Nefel, and Sacred, they both came from the community. I mean, there was a time that, I remember when Nefel was just one of us, not that long ago. I mean, Sacred was on before he was in the community and around even before I was following that closely. So he's got more tenure, I guess. But just two of the nicest guys you could ever hope to meet. I've talked to them both personally, and in the course of testing or through community stuff. So just great adds to the team, and I'm glad to see they're getting more responsibilities. So.
Yeah. And one last thing on this, though, with the production manager, just to specifically, like, again, this may mean something slightly different for VR, but the fact that they are focusing more on production, as in the production team is usually the one that kind of distributes, I wouldn't say distributes work, but they kind of organize a lot of different teams to achieve a final goal. And so to me, when I see, oh my gosh, who's the other, is Ben the lead of production? I can't remember who's the lead now, but having two people on production now kind of indicates to me, A, that they're going to be bringing on more people that they need to coordinate. But B, that they're really focused on defining internal goals and pushing towards those goals in an organized fashion. It's not, I mean, it's still a scrappy crew, right? but it's a scrappy crew with direction. And I like to see that they're, taking on these roles because it is very important to actually creating a project efficiently.
Right. So if you look at the team page, the production, under production, it's Chris Rowan, their executive producer, Ben Dean, the project producer, Chris Perkins, the creative and programming producer, and then Adam Mostel, production manager. So it's funny to look at this team page now because I don't look at it as often as maybe Basgrim or other people. It's actually getting pretty big. There's a lot of people on this team. Now, some names are doubled. I mean, I know that there's doubled up on some of these, but the team is definitely getting bigger, and they want to fill some more roles. A game that's struggling to meet its financials to tempt investors or tempt produce. The word I'm looking for, publishers to come on board. Those teams don't grow, right? Those teams shrink because they're trying to, like, this really bodes well. So I'm just super excited for that. Go look at the team page if you're ever in doubt about what the VR is all about, because it's a good team.
Yeah.
Let's move on and talk about the roadmap. So a couple highlights here, just getting a little bit more specific about the HDRP conversion and a few things about classes and whatnot. But one of the conversations in the community that I'm seeing, is talking a lot again about what's going on with the networking. And we're not going to focus on it, but they do address it actually in the roadmap to alpha. They say work on the networking integration has been ongoing in tandem with support needed for the HDRP. It says we're approaching the last of our HDRP targets, and we expect to fully allocate resources to networking by the end of February. So, again, we said it last week, I think, but there's, they have to do it in the right order. There's just always, there's been a little bit of a delay. I would say look for a big update in March to see where they're at with that piece, because that's the intent now to get cracking on the networking stack and get everything integrated, starting here in late February. So excited for that. Little bit of an update for all you gatherers and crafters out there. Sounds like your needs are getting accounted for. There was an update that talked about their adjusting terrain, adjusting mining nodes and the positions to match thrown fast terrain. They began mapping positions for planned nodes as additional zones are being refined in the HDRP client. And then further passes on nodes and rarity levels based on level ranges and how difficult the nodes are to achieve or traverse to. So, Nefel is adding his spice to the pot and getting his gathering and crafting ideas in there, which is awesome.
Just waiting for that big crafting and gathering update. One of these days, I'm crossing my fingers for it.
I feel like that probably happens sooner rather than later. I feel like that's a topic that they need to circle back on now. But I don't know. Yeah, I know that, I'm not the biggest crafter, but I love to hear about it. And there's a huge section of the community that is interested in that aspect. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Quick note on dispositions and traits from the roadmap. They said they introduced 42 additional unique NPC abilities and traits. 42, man.
It's a good number.
It's a lot of dispositions, a lot of abilities and traits. It's crazy.
I mean, yes, but also this is an MMO. I like it. It's a great number. Like love to see progress, but 42 traits or disposition abilities or traits for a player, that goes so fast. That goes so fast. So I'm sure this isn't the end of it. It's kind of all I'm saying. It's like awesome progress, but in the grand scheme of an MMO, there's still probably a lot of work to do.
As with everything here. Yeah. As with everything. On the art side of things, there was actually a little lore nugget here. The quote was, they said, ongoing work in Wild's End is currently focused on core asset development and construction of the Daedrum Ascent. What the heck is a Daedrum Ascent, Des? That's a new name to me. Unless you or somebody else knows otherwise. I've never heard that before.
Isn't that the name that was mentioned in the dev stream?
Was it? Maybe.
Yeah, I think that was the. I thought that was the dungeon that we were looking at.
The Daedrum Ascent? No, I don't know. I'm not sure. I got to go back and listen to that again. I got to go.
There you go.
Because yeah, and I mean, I didn't have it in the notes here, but the lore that they read for the Galdassi ruins is all in the newsletter there. So yeah, no, it's definitely something to chew on and to look a little further into, which I don't know. I don't know anybody who does those kinds of things. I might have to.
Yeah, we'll have to ask like Ben and I or something, because obviously
maybe Ben and I will. Now the last thing they talked about, we're going to spend a little time here because this is cool. This is really, really cool. It sounds like this is going to be a regular feature of the newsletter going forward, and that's like a Q&A, class development Q&A focus kind of thing. This one was about the wizard class, and they got Adam Mostel, we mentioned earlier, on the Q&A. I'm going to read a quote. It's a long one, but just bear with me because it's really, really worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what Adam said about the wizard. He said, quote, one of the biggest changes to the wizard is revamping their spells to make each line its own distinct and powerful choice. We've also done away with the build spend mechanics and converted focus into a tool that rewards mana efficiency for staying with the given damage type, while also awarding bonus damage for weaving. The intent is to create a more dynamic playstyle for the wizard, where their decisions about how and when to use their biggest spells is more about an assessment of their current resources versus the needs of the fight, and they are free to burn or conserve their mana as suits the situation, rather than anything imposed by a game system. So that's really interesting, and that is right. So let's talk about this, because as you know, I was super lucky. I got to test the wizard. I got to play the wizard when they did the delve into Fortress Devair with me, Nathan Basgrim, and who am I forgetting? Minus. Oh my gosh. Anyway, I was lucky to get to do that, and I can tell you that this change to the wizard makes a lot of sense. Some of the feedback I gave on that experience, and this is not NDA stuff or anything like that, but there was really not a ton of reason to ever deviate from casting a certain pattern most of the time. And if you watch the videos that I did, I actually broke down like all the spells, skills, and like how they worked, how they got, the sort of building up of focus worked. And basically bigger damage and better mana efficiency were both served by doing the one, like basically following that pattern. You got everything with no variation, which was,
it's
okay,
antithetical to like what they want.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So with the way they made this change, you're going to have to choose one or the other, right? Are you going to weave, fire and cold and arcane in together for more damage? Or are you going to stick with one line for mana efficiency's sake? So what do you thought? What are your thoughts on this, Desert?
Oh my gosh.
Kind of
this
a big
was
change.
Music to my ears in so many ways. And like you said, NDA stuff like aside, I think it's safe to say that this is a direct response to feedback like your own, because they don't want this kind of gameplay where it's just this bland rotation, right? And the way that I see this is so exciting because as dynamic as Pantheon combat it will be, being able to on the fly choose what you want to do, how you want to approach combat, and not inherently, I would say, not inherently nerfing like certain elements, like cold is the weak element, or whatever.
Right.
And knowing, I think it was mentioned even that switching between the different focus types, the elements, felt like a penalty, like because you lose all your stacks or whatever. And I love this change because it's not a penalty anymore. There's actually like an incentive, but there's also a drawback, So it's like you switch spells, get a damage bonus, lose a mana efficiency. So no matter what, you're doing something that feels good, but is it the right thing to do? I love that.
Yeah. I feel like this is really the kind of like evolution of, what feedback leads to a better system, right? When feedback leads to a better system, because this is just seems on its face better, even without having tried it out. It seems more intricate and more interesting. So, I mean, and there'll be some people who disagree with that. Absolutely. Like, I think sometimes, there's going to be the ones who say, let me build up my damage without any sort of cost. Let me be efficient and have big damage, right? And it's like, well, no. I mean, then what's the challenge there then? Then it's like you're not making any choices. You're not involved. The obvious choice is obvious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and this goes along with the change they made a little while ago, or not that long ago, but no crits, right? No spell crits anymore.
Right.
So,
right.
Wizards are really getting more and more interesting. And then same thing with that. I know there's people that didn't like that. And Drac, I don't think is a fan of that. But I think that, when we get into the game and we get a chance to test this out, I'm really curious as to what the feedback's going to be on this, because I think it's a step in the right direction. And obviously you do as well.
Yeah. But just to layer on top of the whole no crits thing, it's like, in my head, I mean, the grand fantasy of the wizard is I want big numbers, right? And and it's like, okay, crits, bye. But now it's like you control your crits. Like that's how I imagine it. It's like, okay, you're building up, you're, getting more efficiency, all like prepping for that big, element change, for that damage bonus. For that focus to just really come into play and give you that big number, and to know like when is a good time for that big number, right? But as I think the whole idea, the class like description, it's not like it's changed or anything. Even like fundamental mechanics of it, I feel are the same, but I think it's in a way more calculated. And I mean, who would rather like leave their stuff up to just chance, when you can play well and get a result. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. The last line of that quote actually is really, what nails it for me, is that, you're choosing how to play the character based on your choice rather than anything imposed by the game system itself, right? So instead of having the game make the decision for you, you're making the decision. That's always going to be a winner, in my book, when you let us craft the class and become the way we want it to be. And like you said, you control the crits now. You have the ability to determine when do I need this crit, and when do I need the big damage number, and when do I need to hold back and be more efficient with my mana. So
yeah, and just to add a little tiny bit to the end of that, I just have to say this bodes really well for when we hit alpha and all the class feedback comes in. I think this just goes to show that VR takes this seriously, and they will make changes to fundamental systems like focus if it leads to a better experience, a better class fantasy, and just, more unique play styles. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. And the next point actually is sort of goes along with this, because it was another cool sort of note about the wizard. Here's the quote. They said, "Wizards can look forward to at least one new ability that takes advantage of the charged ability mechanic that was introduced for monks." So Adam says, "I haven't had the chance to start working on the new visual effects for it, but I'm really excited to bring this particular ability to life." End quote. So you'll remember that the monk's charged ability. It's called Blazing Hand Punch. If you remember from the video, a little teaser they put out, really cool graphic associated. And they talked about it a lot, actually, in one of the streams. It causes knockdown damage at full charge. So what a good idea to add this to the wizard's arsenal, right? And I expect some serious, blasting to be going on.
Oh, yeah.
Wizards and some TNT, throwing mobs, down on the cave floor, down on the, ground with their ginormous, meteor sort of thing.
Okay, so exactly that though. When this came through my head, the first thought about the whole Blazing Hand Punch mechanic is going to be like, we're going to be able to use this elsewhere. My first thought was wizards. And because it's just like that whole like build up of, it's such a simple thing, you're holding down a button. It's no big deal. But the whole like build up of a charged attack and release just feels really awesome. And I'm thinking two spells. One, Drac actually got to have his hands on in Black Desert, where it was the big, had quite a big bar of it was, it's more of a cast bar in that sense, but it's like a really, visceral experience, right?
Yeah, it was like a meteor shower from above.
Yeah,
it was brutal.
Giant meteor. I remember the combo actually, but
oh wow.
But the other one is Mana Burn from EQ2, because that was like a really big like lead up, right? And there's like a certain anticipation, and even though you didn't have to like hold it down or whatever, it was just like a cast bar. Like that's the kind of stuff that I imagine for this mechanic, where it's this big buildup of anticipation, and then boom, it's like what's more wizard than that, man?
Yeah, nothing is more wizard than that. I actually think if you go back, I don't remember what episode it was, but I think I do remember you saying that this mechanic is going to get applied to other classes. Yeah, you're 100% right. You did say that. And I remember at the time thinking, yeah, that's probably true. So good for you to sort of predict this down the road, or, so hey, maybe we'll see this again. Like you said, other classes, start thinking about other classes you could apply this to. So, yeah. And the last thing about the wizard, this is sort of a fun little teaser that Adam threw out there. He says, "As for things yet to come, we have our sights on giving wizards access to their own version of traps. And since I love seeing our community unravel to various bean drops, that's all I'll say on the matter for now." So,
why does he have
traps.
to do that? Because now either he means let the community imagine based on what I said here, or he means we've shown something that would help you uncover this mystery. I think it's the former, but the possibility that it's the latter makes me want to rewatch a bunch of stuff.
I don't know. I didn't even think of that. Maybe they have shown it. I got the sense that it's something that we're going to see down the road. Wizards and traps. It's a weird combination. It's not something you see. Like,
Totally. Totally
like
unique.
a frost trap, maybe.
Well, what I'm thinking of like drawing runes on the ground, like because like that would, especially for like soloing, like say like an ice trap or something. I think that would be super cool. So maybe it's not something that's like thrown like caltrops, but if it's like a trap that you set like at your feet, especially if there's like an animation, I would go crazy for that. If the wizard bends down and starts drawing runes on the ground that get activated when something walks over it. Oh my gosh, that also seems very wizard-like,
Yeah, I don't know, man. Who knows what they've got up their sleeve? It's could be anything, but I love these class breakdowns. I hope that this is part of future newsletters going forward. I think this kind of stuff is just fun to talk about and sort of speculate on and eventually see. So yeah, that's the newsletter. Overall, pretty decent month, I would say. Desmond, anything else you wanted to add on this one?
Yeah, I would all agree. Decent. I really loved the new Q&A. I am glad to hear that's probably going to continue. I know we got the Galdassi Ruins thing, and maybe you feel differently, but it wasn't quite the lore segment to me. Does that make sense? Like, it was lore-like, but it wasn't like a lore story.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it wasn't the bait, right? I think that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
I know how much you love the bait, and that's a different kind of thing, where it's very much a narrative of something. This was very much like, historical text of, something that once was
documentation kind of a thing.
Yeah,
which is great too, but. Like, what's the next big story, the big character, like with known characters or unknown characters, and I'm actually really deeply desiring that now after that taste.
Yeah. I love that stuff too. I mean, the Galdassi Ruins, it was pretty cool. I'm like I said, I'm gonna go through it and deep dive it a little bit, because I want to get a better understanding of exactly what it was saying, and then compare it to some of the lore that's been on the website in the past, and sort of see where it leads me. But a good mix. This newsletter had a piece on lore, good Q&A on a class, and then the overall sort of progress update. So yeah, kind of hit some good notes there. So. But I'm with you. So that's it for VR news. The only note we're going to do, we'll just do the Pantheon Plus weekly calendar, and not as much going on this week as we have in the past. But I do want to say that on Tuesday this week, for our Classes 101, we are starting up Lost Ark, which is a new MMO that you may or may not be aware of. Came out a couple weeks ago now. So this Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, but it's not going to be on the Pantheon Plus Twitch channel. We're actually going to be on CryptFox's Twitch channel, because he's hosting us and because Drac is away this week. So it's going to be me, CryptFox, Stands in the Fire, and Tetsu, who are taking on Lost Ark. So if you're interested in that game, come check us out, 9 o'clock Eastern, like I said, on CryptFox's Twitch channel. Sparrow's back on her Twitch adventure doing ESO at 9 p.m. on Wednesday. So go and say hi to her. Redbeard Flynn has a video coming out on Friday, just talking about games coming out for March. So looking at previewing games and things like that. That's the Pantheon Plus calendar for this week. There'll probably be more stuff that just isn't on there yet. We didn't get a chance to firm up, but stay tuned for anything that you're interested in. And that's it for this week's VR news and notes. When the Pantheon community speaks, we listen. So let's dig into the forums and fan projects to see what the discussion's all about.
Right, this week's community discussion is actually coming from the official Pantheon Twitter account. This is one of Kilson's Tavern Talk prompts. And Theric suggested I grab this one, and I couldn't agree more, because, as I'm sure all of you know, we're big on community here.
Just a little.
So the question asked is, I'll just quote it. Are you part of a guild? If so, what kind of guild is it and how big? Have you got any guild goals in mind for Pantheon? Don't be shy, give your guild a shout out. Now, I figured not only is this a nice time to maybe like give some guilds a shout out of our own, but also talk about something I'm sure a long-time listeners will be familiar with. So, but yeah, let's get some of the guild shout-outs out of the way first, since I did pick out a few distinct guilds in there. The first one's kind of cool, and this one was pointed out by SImurgh, which is shouting out Pantheon. Sorry, I have to pause here because reading cracks me up a little bit. It's Pantheon Buffbot Union. And this is an EU guild, so
yeah, that fits with what I know about SImurgh. sort of irreverent, sort of very sarcastic, but cool that some EU guilds here, and I can probably confirm, although not 100%, that this is not a spear wielding dwarven only guild. I assume there are more classes and races and weapon wielding types allowed, but you'll have to confirm that with SImurgh. So.
yeah. Now there's also Ex Umbris, as Wyson mentioned, which is originally from Vanguard's Woefeather server.
Nice.
Yeah, and I also just love that Kilson responded to this one. Not only saying he remembers them, but also noting that he was in another guild named Reverence back then. And like, dude, it's just really cool to be reminded constantly that like these people are us.
Yeah. It's seriously like this is the same crew that's been around these games for 20 freaking years. We're all refugees of these old games. I mean, not everybody obviously, but a large portion of the community that is following Pantheon is very much into this. The Woefeather server, I hadn't heard that name in a long time. That's pretty cool. I mean, I remember seeing that server on the listing.
Right.
I don't remember Reverence, but that's pretty cool, man. Pretty
cool. Yeah. And I was like trying to remember, but I think I was on another server like Ceradon or something along those
don't
lines.
even remember which one I was
Me
on.
either.
I don't remember.
I remember my guild name, but it's just really like neat that, I'm sure every one of these community or these team members on VR like have some ties, some people that they probably would recognize. And that's just awesome.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, and Wizen is a good writer. He writes some fan fiction on the Pantheon.plus website too. So awesome that they gave him a shout out.
Yeah, and also, I mean, as you'd expect, like a lot of people are in the realm of like, I'm gonna plan on starting my own guild, or I have some friends that we're gonna make a guild or whatever. Now, of course, like the Plus Guild had to represent in force. I think.
Yeah, I didn't get in there, but I saw there was lots of our folks in there, sort of representing the guild wisely.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and this is like a great example of like making us known, I guess, because we do have a quite an active community in Plus, but okay, and then we have the finale. And admittedly, this is the point of me pulling this thread. And this one's a reply from user Jonathan Yeager saying this. Guild requires the game to be out. Though, as a broader statement, guilds in MMOs haven't mattered in years.
And to be fair, I set you up completely on this because I clipped this and sent it to you, and I was like, dude, we got to talk about this. Like, so this is I take responsibility if anybody's upset that I included a negative response here, because this was my thought was that we need to address this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, admittedly, I know, guys, like I kind of like let up and baited you a little bit, but it's a good discussion, and so the official account, so Kilson responded, which naturally, right? And he said this: "We see guilds created in our pre-alpha sessions all the time. Our community is awesome at finding each other and grouping up, which is what Pantheon is all about. So the game doesn't need to be released to create or join an awesome guild."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, Kilson, that's right. I want to give my take on this too here, because like I said, I sort of instigated this a little bit. But it's so opposite that you have to wait for the game to be out to get a group together that you're interested in playing with. In fact, this is the perfect time to be doing that. So many, you wait for the game to come out and then you try and form a guild. It takes time to develop the kind of relationships you need to play a game that what Pantheon's going to be like. I mean, it's going to be different from what you're expecting. I don't know what, this person's background is in gaming, but I will say that, we've gotten away from the idea that guilds matter in MMOs, which they say they haven't mattered in years. And that part is true, because there is a less need of guilds in games at current MMOs, I would say. Not across the board, but in general. And right now, you have an opportunity with Pantheon being in development for a long time and a long road to go. You have an opportunity to make this a different experience than you've ever had in an MMO before, or maybe a better one than you had in one before. EverQuest. I was in a guild in EverQuest. And one of my regrets with EverQuest, and I've said this before, is that I didn't I wasn't as involved in the guild as I would have liked to be, or I should have been, or I felt like I really wanted to be, but I didn't have the confidence at the time, or the, the self-assuredness, or whatever it took to step up and be more of a leader, be more of somebody who can, bring people together and foster good guilds. And right now, like we have this window of opportunity that's being wasted if you believe that guilds require the game to be out. I mean, it just seems like such a waste to me. And I really want people to just take a quick re-examination if you believe that the game has to be out for you to be part of a guild. And there's some guilds that have transcended games for decades,
Oh, yeah.
You and I both know that, right?
Yeah.
And these are some of the best guilds around because they're not based on a game, they're based on friendships. So maybe that's where I should just sort of end my little mini rant here instead of saying it's not about the game, it's about the friendships and the relationships and being a part of something. So
yep, and driving that home to mean that is a major tenet of Pantheon, is fostering a community, and the fact that it can and does happen before the game's even released is, I think, a testimony to just how far this game could take the genre back to the very social roots that it has been in the past. I mean, even now, it's so funny because, I went through all this stuff and I am checking the forums, and just today, there's like postings on the guild forum, guild sub forum. People are looking for folks. So if you want to become part of a community, and I mean, the Plus Guild's a good example. We're playing a different game every week, I'll admit, right? But like, we're always trying to make connections somehow, and I've been able to play tons of games with friends, with guildies, and people that eventually we'll play Pantheon together, but it's almost like secondary at this point, right?
Right, exactly. Think about this. We have this is totally like a ridiculous point, but I'm going to make it anyway. We have a channel in our Discord called Wordle is Not a Word. And the stupid Wordle game has, even that has been something we've been able to focus on and come together and have fun doing as a group. So the game doesn't matter. Like the game, it matters. Of course it matters. We want good games and whatever. But my point is that it can be anything. You need to just find something that you have in common. Like whatever. This is obvious, and it's just, I'm just trying to get people to not say, well, you can't have you can't have a guild without the game. It's like, well, yes, you can.
Yeah. Well, but not to like defend or anything, but I do think there is an element of the genre's like direction, like leading someone to believe that, though. And all I can hope is that that can be changed. The perception of the genre to make you think that can change. And I'll pull one last response to kind of wrap us up here, and that's from Nocturnal Demise. And this is the quote. As someone who has been in and led guilds from pre-launch games, I can say that it's often the part that has the most fun pre-launch. The dreaming,
Perfect.
the speculating, the organizing and planning is a blast. But sadly, inevitably, MMOs fail to give guilds much impact in the game. And that is exactly what we're talking about. The pregame is like so fun.
Yeah, right. Pregame, right? Think about like going to a sporting event, right? Tailgating. It's the best part of the thing, right? There's no game going on yet. And so get in here. We're all tailgating Pantheon. You can be a part of this tailgating crew.
Oh my gosh. That's a perfect way to wrap this up. So I'm just going to say we got to end it there. Thanks for coming along on the ride. Everybody join the tailgating party, and that is going to be it for this week's community discussion. The Pantheon community is full of cool projects, new people, and things that are just worth sharing. What's this over here? Look at that. So let's see what we can find in this week's Community Spotlight. So as far as Community Spotlight, well, honestly, this one was a bit light. Unfortunately, I've got no new fan fiction that I know of, no new introductions on the forums. So let's just shout out some YouTube content. So
absolutely.
for one, we've got another Pantheon related video from SImurgh, who is like relating to I guess a few additional thoughts to the last video as he begins. He's starting to make videos about Pantheon now, and his feelings like kind of as he comes into that space from like Ashes and other stuff. And just some other like kind of thoughts and concerns about the project. So I think this is really an interesting one, just because this is someone that's been in another game that's like kind of poking into Pantheon, and he talks about the community being very positive, but he's also obviously SImurgh's not one to like back down from some questions or concerns, right? And so I just gotta say, like, I'm glad that he's happy to put his like ideas his like stuff out there, both positive and like slightly concerned. So check that out. Maybe you'll have some comments as well for him as well.
Yeah, he makes good content. I mean, I've been aware of his content, and they do a podcast with Nathan Napalm, and but they just have never been about Pantheon very much. So it's not really like, it's not been super like something I pay attention to very closely. But like he's branching into Pantheon now, so all the better.
Yeah. And also we've got another video from Dawkin, and I'm super happy to shout out because it's on the Archai. And, I'm just a big fan.
Big fan.
So thanks, Dawkin, for doing a video on the Archai. It's excellent. If you haven't seen those videos, looks like he's kind of starting to do a series that's really fun. So go check that out. That's actually it. So shout out to the community, I guess. If you've got some cool Pantheon related content, be it art, videos, fan fiction, or heck, even music, make sure to post it somewhere and let me know so I can maybe feature it here on the Rewind.
I just want to mention too before we finish up this section, but we do have a channel in the Pantheon Plus Discord that is available to anybody. You can join our Discord. It's art. So if you have some fan artwork that you want on the Rewind, just go join our Discord and throw it in that channel. I'll probably reach out. Desrin and I will reach out and DM you and just say, hey, that's super cool. We'd like to feature it, and as long as you're okay with it, then we'll throw it up on the video for the show here.
Yeah, it's super fun. That's gonna be it for this week's Community Spotlight.
Sit back and relax. It's time for the lore you know. The past is the past, and the present is upon us. When we enter Terminus, and by that I mean us, the players, it'll be what's known as the Frail Age. And it begins with an uncertainty as to the strength of peace that has come with the end of the Deicide War. Also, an uncertainty as to how the races of Terminus will fare. The year is 486 IH, and much change is still to come. So join me as I read the words of J.N. Gerhardt, Pantheon's lead writer, to bring you the lore of the Frail Age. Though it is commonly assumed, the Age of Chaos did not simply end at the conclusion of the Deicide War. For even as the Revenant threat was finally beaten back or dispersed, much of Terminus lay in ruin. Entire cities, cultures, realms, and even landscapes were wiped away in the bloodshed, and many that remained were irreversibly transformed, much like Itero was transformed, much like the Jinto were. For such was the heritage of this war of gods, nothing could ever be the same. As wounded Terminus took her first breaths in victory, wrapped in the hasty dressings of the dead, she looked over her injured body and saw her inhabitants broken like tissue, tendon, and bone. There were fractures needing the utmost care to be set, yet too many that would never properly receive it. Alas, the start of the Frail Age came when the dignitaries of the Sacred Six returned to Vesu 5 months after the suns availed at Kadrahor. Rather, when 4 of the 6 did so. For many a midnight pact was broken in the light of this new day, but none so significant as the one founded on Vesu. There stood only 5 posts on the wet sands of the mist-soaked isle, and on them hung only 4 heralds. The elven, human, dwarven, and Archai stood as they had always, while the ogre post was in place, yet with their herald removed. The Darkmer post was gone entirely, as if it had never been planted in the first. Both absences communicated with clarity. There was no kinship fostered in those desperate hours, nor fealty among those without recourse. The 6 were no longer sacred, thus remarked by the young human king Avendir. This age, whatever it hold, must be frail. The year was 486 IH, and the age of chaos was over. From here we must move the dials of time forward, for there have been 3 major additions to the cast of Terminus in this era. From 620 to 622, the halflings of Hirith, Scar of Deshoth, and gnomes of Stormona all arrived in yearly succession. It is fair to notice that the third is easily the most diverse of the collisions, with no one race quite like any other that I have encountered or seen record of. What a great mercy that each fell where they did, for the halflings on Rainfall or the Scar in Whitethaw might have yielded a regional bouquet of bloodshed. As for the gnomes, I say they could have been plotted anywhere, and lived indifferent of it. Though I suppose the Scar did start a war almost immediately upon their arrival, and then another, civil one, for they landed in a wooded spot that bordered the lands of a people known as the Kajans. These are an offshoot of the Kaja Sands orphan race, who split from their desert brethren in 568, and yes, the Kajans do not reside in the Kaja Sands, the orphans do. The Scar collision is believed to be most violent, a foretaste of what they would bring culturally to the region. Faster than any race could react, they turned Kajan streams acrid and enslaved a number of their population. The peaceable Kajans fled, but the Scar barely gave chase before falling upon each other, as is their natural order. The halflings have planted well in Wild's End, grooming the wide root trees of the coast and grassland into a town of breathtaking uniqueness. They can be found all over the globe, and I count one in my close company. I shall say no more, for they are people who must be known face to face, not discovered on a page. The gnomes are what they are. It feels strange to write down that they have dwelt on Terminus for over 250 years, when so little can be shared about them. The myths would pack my vault, the truth would fit in a jar. For 50 years, their floating skyhold remained shut like a sanctum, heeding no hails from Causus or even a night visit from Tel Narcissus, the snow dragon. But the persistence of the Archai eventually brokered a dialogue of sorts. Now their doors, or bridges rather, are open, and I believe one day in the future of Terminus will find herself in great need of their acumen. Though today, they seem almost intentionally bizarre.
And that is the lore you know. And that brings us to the end of episode 90. Wow. 90 episodes. We have 10 more to go, until the big 100. We have not started thinking about what we're doing for that yet. If you are listening to this and you have some ideas what you'd like to see for episode 100, we're definitely open to them. Obviously
within reason, right? Like
yeah, within reason is right. We're not flying to some bar to do a show on stage or something like that.
As cool as that would be.
Which would be cool, yes, but not at this point. But let's get some ideas going. What you guys want to see for episode 100, we definitely are feeling creative. We want it to be a momentous event for the rewind. So let's check back and see what we can come up with next time. But thanks for hanging out with us this week. As always, remember, check the links in the show notes and the video description for all the content that we've discussed. Go leave a like on the YouTube video, subscribe if you haven't already to the channel. And we'd love to see you here again next week. So have a great one every week, and we will see you next time.
See you next week, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon Plus Rewind. Pantheon Plus is not affiliated with Visionary Realms. Be sure to check out our Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube channels under the name Pantheon Plus. You can follow Theric at Pantheon Theric on Twitter,
and Desrin at DesrinDoes, also on Twitter. And you can stay up to date with all things Pantheon at www.pantheon.plus. Until next time, cheers, and thanks for listening.